is the need for biologists and biotechnologists in society and agriculture perspective. My special thanks to Dr. P.F. Stephen, the organizing secretary, and Dr. Rainey Christina, the program convener. Before we start the session, let me just inform you all that the feedback form link will be posted in the comments section at the close of the webinar. I would further like to request you all to make this session more interactive by sharing your questions or queries in the comments section. Joining with us today is our valuable resource person, Dr. Deepak Haarith. He has completed his PhD in plant pathology from the University of Minnesota, USA, the year 2020. Before his doctoral studies, he had completed the integrated Bachelor and Master of Technology in Industrial Biotechnology from Shastra University, India, the year 2013. In addition to the aforesaid, Dr. Deepak has been a short-term research associate in the National Center for Biological Sciences, Bengaluru, India, the year 2014, a senior research fellow in Jipma Hospital, Puducherry, India, the year 2013, a summer research fellow in the Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, Mohali, India, the year 2012, summer research fellow for Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, India, the year 2011, and a research fellow in National Open Source Drug Discovery for Tuberculosis, the year 2010. Dr. Deepak is actively involved in the fields of mentoring, conference proceedings, and community service. In addition to that, he has several presentations, publications, awards, and honors to his credit. His areas of research interest revolve around plant pathology, mycology, dermatology and chemical control section, molecular biology, setting up greenhouse assays, fungal biological control, understanding the biology and ecology of natural antagonists of soybean cyst, nematodes for biological control. And I would now like to request Dr. Deepak Haarith to please take over the session. Over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. As introduced, my name is Deepak, and I'm here to talk to you about some of my experiences, basically. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat section, or you could reserve it for the end of the session. I promise you that I'm not going to talk a lot. This is going to be a 40-minute light presentation, and then we could have a bunch of discussions later. So let me go at it. So I am currently a postdoctoral research associate at University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is in the United States. I'm a recent graduate from University of Minnesota, as introduced, and my area of specialty is plant pathology or plant-microbe interactions. So please follow me on Twitter if you want to keep the communication going and talk more about my interests and whatnot. So as I told you before, today I will be sharing some of my perspectives grounded in my experience. And it is important to share one's stories because there's always something to learn from everybody's experience. And as I am telling you and narrating you the story of mine and giving you some pointers and things that I picked up on my way, I would like you to do some introspection where you think about what you are doing, what you want to do, and what you have done so far, and how you can harness the power of what you've already learned and done. So having said that, I'm going to move into the meat of my presentation, if I can say that. So before I go into that, I want to paint a picture of this context. I was born and raised in Tamil Nadu, and I studied in Tamil Nadu. So this perspective comes from the experiences had in those places. And before 2015, I was never out of the country. So from 2015, I've been here. So most of this needs to be taken with a grain of salt and under the context of Indian education and Indian paradigms. So growing up, when you talk about choosing biology over computer science at school level and want to study, there are lots of reasons why people do not want to take biology or biotechnology. Some of them, and the most ridiculous ones, are that drawing is difficult. This is something that I've heard multiple times growing up. But the truth is, you don't need to be an artist. You just need to represent what you see. So that is not a right excuse to not learn biology or biotechnology. The other one is that there are too many names to learn. Well, it is not just mugging up names. Names have meanings too. And we do meet a lot of people every day, and everybody has a name, and we learn names. So that is not a credible reason to not learn biology. So I think more and more people should learn biology because people as such are biological organisms, correct? And then one of the main reasons is no jobs. So when we think about learning, we immediately think about jobs. We do not think about learning. So that is something that I would like to put in your mind right in the beginning of this talk so that you can mull over it and think about the other things that I'm saying in the context of having a job. And a lot of people told me that biology is for girls and it's not so manly. And a lot of girls do biology. Why would boys do biology? And finally, your parents are not proud of what you're doing. Because if you're a biologist, you might not get a job. And if you don't have a job, you don't have money and you don't have social status and whatnot. And the list goes on and on and on. And so these are some of the reasons why a lot of people shy away from biology that I have come across growing up in learning biology and becoming a biologist. So if you have had shared experiences, I would like you to think about those experiences and see if some things have changed for you or some perspective has changed for you regarding those things. Okay, so when we think of careers in biology, what we automatically think about are medical professionals, doctors, nurses, paramedical staff, and whatnot. To some extent now pharmacists and lab technicians. So when we think of careers in biology, it's heavily influenced by human healthcare and medical research and the medical field where there is money. So naturally, these are the people who earn good money. So that is why we want to be in biology. And if we are in biology, we only want to pursue these careers. These are some things that were relevant to me while growing up, and things might have been different to you, but I assume that it is not so, considering my interactions with others who grew up with me and people who are going through this process of choosing careers at this point in their time right now. And then when we think of other careers in biology, we often think of biology teachers at school and then scientists to some extent. And mostly scientists to the extent where, oh no, I want to avoid getting married, so I'm going to keep going to school and getting degree after degree so that I could prolong my time as a bachelor or a bachelorette. And that is the reason why a lot of people seem to do biology now. In fact, I have had emails from a lot of people from India telling me that they want to desperately come to the US for a master's degree or a PhD because they want to escape their family trying to fix them up with somebody. So those are some of the things that we must think about ourselves. Are we looking for a career or are we looking to do something else? And is that something that we should be doing? And the other drawback apparently is that when you are a teacher or a scientist, you actually don't earn much money. So they're not attractive careers, which also means that we have additional societal stigma wherein, that's a pun by the way, wherein women are more suited or considered more suited for teaching professions because it's a very effeminate thing to do because you work little hours and you pay really, really little. And so it is not something that men usually think about these days. And that is something to mull over. Because if more men get involved in the teaching process, I'm pretty sure that the salaries of teachers would go up. Then why do we go to college and get an education? So we've just seen what are the careers that jump in our minds when we talk about biology. But one thing that is true with a lot of Indian households is that we need to go to college and get an education. But let me go into more detail about that. When we say that we need to go to college and get a degree and education, we only mean that we need means to get a job and get a salary. That is the main thing. If you Googled or looked at or even asked any of the job consultants who come on TV and talk about careers, the first thing that is always discussed is what kind of jobs would you get when you graduate from a particular degree course or whatever, and how much money you would make. I think that that's a shoddy perspective to begin with, any career for that matter, because learning and education should be about knowledge and passion. And if you have enough passion and if you are very knowledgeable, then automatically success should follow. So there are two camps here. You could either earn a degree or a diploma in order to get a job and a salary, or you could learn for knowledge and passion and become somebody who's unique, because everybody intrinsically is a very unique person and brings unique perspective. Two people with the same training could bring completely different perspectives to the same issue, and that is what we should be thinking about, whether we need knowledge and passion attached to education or job and salary when we talk about education. I'm not saying that job and salary and economic benefits are not important, but I'm saying that that is not what we must be basing things on. Then again, the truth is that you could get a degree, but that automatically does not lead anybody to success, which you should think about a little bit more, because getting a degree is not getting an education. And you could be educated without having a degree or a diploma. And literacy is completely different from getting an education. Education is where you try to learn how to connect the dots, how to see things as an interconnected map, and not just gathering information and trivia and then shouting it out and vomiting out in exams and papers and whatnot. That is not what education is. That is just you being a person with a good memory, and that is not going to help anyway. You would get a degree, but is that an education? Is something that we must all ask ourselves. We also know a lot of people these days carry placards that say, "I'm educated and unemployed," and this draws our attention to two things. You are not educated. You just went to college, spent a bunch of money, and then got a degree. And if you are unemployed, that shows that your degree isn't a huge factor in you getting a job. And we must not wait for somebody to give us jobs if we are only planning to get a degree to get a job. So it's a weird thing to think about, but that is something definitely we should be thinking about, is whether we are educated or we have a degree, and how that is related to getting a job versus having a career. Because job is you or us expecting somebody else to give us a task, and career is when we do something that we like and love the most. Then again, you don't have to get a lot of education to end up contributing significantly that you finally end up on a postage stamp. So that is the truth, is that all you need is not a degree. You need education, and education is not always evaluated by the degree that you have. Oftentimes, people who get MBA work for people who don't have much education. So that tells a lot. The most important thing here, again, is passion. So when you want to learn something and do something, we must all think that, do we like it? Do we like it enough to be doing it for the rest of our lives? Because I think, in my opinion, this is more important than choosing your own life partner, because this is going to live and die with you forever. So choosing love and choosing biology for the sake of loving biology is very important if you're considering a career in biology or biotechnology or whatever. And all other social stigmas should be kept behind, locked in our minds. Then there is this other thing about maths. Oh my God, I am not good at maths. I don't like maths, but I am good at it, but I don't like it. This was me all through my school. I loved biology, I loved chemistry, because my biology teachers and chemistry teachers were amazing and they inspired me to learn. And oftentimes it's just the classroom experiences that make us like or hate whatever we are learning. And so I was not keen on mathematics, but I was good at it, good enough to secure a meritorious position in an engineering university, but I wasn't really interested in it. So I literally wanted to dump maths out. And a lot of people in my age at my time thought that BTech Biotechnology, because it's biology, bio, there's very little math that is involved. So that is probably an option to take if you don't want to do science courses and if you don't want to have a lot of math. So this is a meme, like you don't like maths, but you do want an engineering degree. And that is a very, very common phenomena or theme that I have observed amongst my peers. So I do love biology, but why would I go and get a BSc degree when I can get a BE or a BTech? I have good scores, I have mugged and vomited all the data and information as required, and I've gotten enough marks to get anywhere I want. Why would I choose a BSc? It's not as heavy as a BE or BTech. Because BE or BTech will put us on top of the social pyramid, where you could say that you're an engineer. Now, who is not an engineer these days, right? And then there's also the sense of job security more for people with a BE or a BTech degree. Even I was told by my own parents that if I ended up doing a BSc, I wouldn't have a career. So that is one of the reasons why, actually the major reason, why I chose to do a BTech and Tech degree and not a BSc degree. Excuse me for a second. All right. Then the most important thing is the bragging rights. We all love to brag to others, but that is about living for somebody else. We want to say, oh, I got so much score that I got into this institution, I got into that course, which is very hard to get. This is something that we love doing, or at least our parents love doing, is that we want to tell others that we are better than them. And that is the reason why we choose the careers that we choose. We want to choose the career from which we can get maximum bragging rights, and apparently BE and BTech seems to have that. Because in my introspection, I found out that the previous generation did not have a lot of engineering colleges around and a lot of opportunities to become engineers. So it was a very rare thing to find engineers and in engineering students, and it was even more difficult to get into engineering colleges. Now there's an engineering college in every street, and I'm not even joking. My school converted one of its buildings, and it's now running an engineering college. So that is how the engineering education is going on, because everybody, or at least the parent generation, thinks that it's a noble thing to do, and science not so much. And another important aspect is that all engineers, irrespective of what they learn in engineering, get campus placement and then get placed in IT. All universities want to show that all their students got a job before they graduated, and they don't really seem to care what kind of jobs these people get. They just want you to get a job. And it is very easy for them to bring just 4 IT companies, and each company take thousands of people from a single campus and herd you like cattle and sheep. So if you think about it, if you're treated like cattle and sheep and hired, yes, you're hired, you're part of the pack, but what does that do to you? Is there any individuality? Is there anything that is you in that entire process? And what is the point of going to an engineering school and spending 4 years about learning 8:30 to 3:30 or 4 o'clock every single day. You know, arts and science colleges aren't that long. You put all your energy and money into learning a degree. Only at the end of the day, you'll be placed in an IT company where they would take you to this secure location and train you for 6 months and make you forget whatever you learned and make you learn just what they need you to learn. And you're just a brainwashed cattle. And that seems to be reason good enough to do engineering and choose engineering irrespective of what other it is. So we must think about it. And there's no point in complaining how the work conditions are so bad where we work at when we haven't put in any passion into getting where we are. And again, I cannot repeat this. The most significant part is bragging. We must stop bragging and we must stop comparing ourselves to everybody else. Everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses and passion, and that is what we must base things upon. And not everybody is the same, although everybody is created equal. So we must stop doing things for the sake of others and try to think what we want and try to see what is within us and act accordingly. Now, with all those reasons put together, when I was 17 and I just had passed high school, I thought BTech Biotech is definitely better than BSc Bio anything because of all these reasons. There's less maths, it's an engineering degree, I'm definitely going to get a job after that. More than me, my parents were very anxious for me to do this. And it sounded very easy at that point of time, and then you jumped in. I was a little bit greedy, and I should say I was a little smart at that time to choose an integrated degree that would give me 2 degrees and some more time to think about what I am doing and not stress about what the next step would be. So that is what I did. But all of those things are definitely wrong. Those are not the perspectives to have, and those are not what a BTech Biotechnology degree actually was. So when we look at what science, engineering, and technology are, science is basically getting to know your environment and the nature. Whereas engineering and technology actually harness the power of science or knowledge to make something that would transform the lives or make the lives of people better. So application of science is engineering, and we apply engineering to lives. Sorry? Okay. So applying science is engineering, and applying engineering to life is technology. And that is a very important, they do overlap, but then it's very important to know that there are different branches of STEM education. Therefore, BTech Biotechnology is not the same as BSc Biotechnology with more money and job opportunities. Now, knowing what I know today, what I wish I had known, what would have made my decisions much more informed? And that is something that I'm very keen to share with you all. BSc Biotech is a science degree, yes. Therefore, it helps one understand the principles behind how nature works, how biology works, and how we might be able to manipulate biology based on how it works. So I would repeat that it's a science degree which only helps one understand the principles behind how things work. It is more of people who are curious to know what it is than for people who actually want to do something with knowledge that they know. It's not application oriented primarily, but it is to go and develop your skills and satisfy your curiosity, if you will. So basically, science wants to know more than it wants to exploit its knowledge. So some of the examples are studying microbiology, which is studying microorganisms and their biology. What do we mean when we say we're studying biology? It means that we are going to observe what is already happening in nature and study what things are the way they are. And then biochemistry, which is basically studying chemistry in biological molecules, and then chemistry as such. And a chemist can become a microbiologist, and a microbiologist can become a chemist. And in fact, Nobel laureates in biology have been physicists in the beginning. Therefore, So physics is also an important part of science, but that doesn't mean that physics is engineering or physics is math, although there's a lot of math and engineering derived and linked to physics. Again, genetics is studying the genes and the makeup of what makes life. So science basically wants to ask what is the phenomenon that is going on by observing and why something is happening the way it is happening. That is what a science degree gives you, the ability to ask these questions. Whereas BTech Bio is basically hardcore chemical engineering. I will say that again. BTech Biotech is hardcore chemical engineering. We're using chemical engineering principles, including heat transfer, mass transfer, and reaction engineering and things like that, which is all a lot of mathematics, by the way. And we apply that to biological molecules and biological processes. So that is what a BTech degree does, that it takes science and applies the principles of science to do something else. Now, this is an example or a summary of what a BTech Biotech course is all about. So top left corner, there's a cyanobacterial cell, and this is a figure that shows a phenomenon that is naturally happening. So we exploit the phenomenon and then try to scale it up to such an extent that we are able to make money out of it by distributing it to a lot of people. So observing something that happens in a cell, a single cell, and then taking it to a bigger scale, then making it available for people is what BTech Biotech is designed to help people learn and do. Well, what it does is, if you're familiar with mathematics, that's an integral symbol. It integrates all of these signs that we know and we learn, and then puts it into work by creating things that we need. For example, antibiotics, insulin, or even just a bread factory is a product of engineering, which is based in science, as well as beer, wine, and whatever we might eat or drink, all comes from engineering, which uses science and makes things possible. Because baking one loaf of bread is completely different from baking thousands and thousands of loaves of perfect loaves of bread every day and maintaining the same quality over time. So that is what engineering is, and that is what BTech Biotechnology is about. It's fermentation engineering, so you learn how to make beer, wine, and a lot of bread and antibiotics and things like that. So it took me halfway into that 5-year program to realize that I am not an engineer, because all of the things that I talked about BTech Biotech aren't the things that excite me the most. So it took me almost 2.5 years to learn what the differences are and to understand that I'm probably not an engineer and that is not my passion. 2.5 years is a lot of time to invest in something, but then there was no reason to despair, because it's better to realize late than never. So what did I do? I looked at what people are really passionate about around me. One was cancer. So I looked into some articles regarding cancer and whatnot and saw if that interested me. I tried to experiment myself with other subjects such as parasitology and microbiology and tried to see if that interested me. And then I even looked into hardcore chemistry, materials, and things like that, and saw if that is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So once I realized that engineering isn't for me and science is, I started looking for options that I could branch out into. You know, I was going to get a master's degree, but that doesn't mean that I have to stick with something and that is my life. And I always have the power to change what I want. And then I also looked into genetics. But finally, what interested me was this: plant-microbe interactions. How do plants and microbes interact? This is something that we don't think much about, because plants aren't moving, we can't pet plants, they don't bark, they don't meow, they don't do anything, and we think that they're just there producing stuff for us. Unless you're a farmer and you experience crop losses, you don't really think about how microbes interact with plants. And that to me sounded really, really interesting. And I came across a paper from Professor Caitlin Allen, who is currently a professor here at University of Wisconsin. And it was about how the way a bacterial cell moves gives it an advantage to become a better pathogen in plants. And that was fascinating to me as to how just the way some bacteria moves helps it to become a better pathogen on the plants. And that sent a spark, and that led me to read a lot more papers of plant-microbe interactions. And the other reasons is that if you think about it, plants and microbes are older than the oldest people. They're really old, and their interactions are probably one of the oldest and most significant interactions ever. And plants are the primary producers. And if not for plants, until we starve, we don't think about plants much. Until there's a famine, we don't think about plants much. But it is true that if it is not for plants, we won't be able to harness the energy of the sun and then turn it into food and have life as we have it right now. So that was fascinating to me. And the other part is how it was very similar to geopolitics. Because microbes and plants, they always compete with each other. To
Sorry
see
to
who
interrupt,
has,
you're having some issues from your end.
okay? What kind of issues are you having? Hello?
Vishalni?
Dr. Deepak, your voice is not clear for us.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, we are able to hear you, but there are a lot of interruptions from the past 15 minutes around.
Okay, what do you mean by interruptions? Because I'm in a quiet
That-
place.
It just goes blank in between and then again it resumes.
That might be the internet. Is that the case for everybody? Because I take internet meetings every day, and I think it should be fine. Is that the case?
Sir, your voice is fine, sir. We can hear you perfectly. Maybe some problem in her line. It's okay, sir. You can continue.
Okay, thank you very much for that confirmation. So, as I was saying, it is one of the oldest interactions, and that also boggled my mind, as well as the fact that it is very similar to geopolitics. And I was interested in geopolitics because if you look at it from an academic perspective, it's very interesting because somebody is always trying to get the upper hand in the interaction, and that is what keeps everything going. When we have an issue with a neighboring country, what that means is that that person or that country has something to pressure us to do something else. And that is what plant microbe interactions is all about, and that fascinated me. So those are the reasons why, after reading Professor Allen's papers, I started reading more and more of plant microbe interactions, and that got me in. I did read a bunch of other papers, and so did my friends, but this is what interested me, and this is what I chose. Therefore, I'm not saying that this is one of the best things to do. This was the best thing for me to do because I loved it. That's the running theme. Well, there was also this phenomenon where I was sitting in the middle of Tanjavur, which is known as the Rice Bowl, and has a lot of agriculture going around, or supposed to be going around. That made me think about the of the ancient mariner, where there's a line that says, "Water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink." And I was here in the middle of the Rice Bowl, and the university that I went to was primarily an engineering institute, and does not do anything with all the lands and farmers and things around it. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but to me, that was an interesting fact and made me ponder more about food systems and the ability of engineers and professionals to contribute to it, and what is the reason, and what is the reason for a university to exist in a place, and what is the role of university and academics in society. Because you have all this land around, but you're not in an agriculture course, right? But that's not a bad thing. Okay, that's a niche. People want to be engineers too. This is my reason to think. But other people can have other perspectives. And no perspective is wrong as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. And we are always taught about not to forget the growing population, how we might become the most populous country on earth, and how we are the second most populous country on earth, and how we have food security issues and hunger issues, if not in our own neighborhood, but somewhere in the country, or if not in our country that we know of. We've at least seen pictures of people in other countries who are suffering from all of this. And again, to bolster the point of, about population, right now we're number 2, but in 2100 we're projected to be number 1, and this blue band in the middle is what we are. And so there's definitely, as long as people live, we do need food, and plants seem to be the only producers that can satisfy the needs of people in terms of food. And so it is really important for us to think about plants. Excuse me. So these were my reasons to think about what I got into, but it might not be the same reasons why you should. But because my talk is about an ag perspective, I'm telling you all this. Again, you need to introspect and think about what you want to do and what interests you the most. Then again, if you look at the agricultural production, it has been stagnant, as well as value addition. There are two different things. You might be someone who does not produce anything, but you might buy something and then add value to it. For example, you might be someone who doesn't, who's not a paddy farmer, but then you take the paddy and then turn it into rice flour and sell it. Because a kilogram of rice flour is actually valued more than a kilogram of rice, correct? Because the processing is involved and you're adding value to it. And so all of this is stagnant while our population and the demand grows. And the demand not just grows by the number of people that we have, it's also about exposure. When we don't know what people are getting outside of our country, we're okay with what we have. But when we know what is possible, then we always want more. So that also jacks up the demand. And then while we're looking at increase in production, which is now stagnant at this point, there's also a decrease in terms of losses. Weeds, insects, and diseases are major agricultural issues that our country or any country faces. Therefore, preventing losses is as important as earning profit. So these are the things that I was thinking about when I was fascinated by plant-microbe interactions, and I was thinking if that was the right thing for me to do. And these are some of the reasons why it excited me to go into plant-microbe interactions. So 2.5 years into my integrated master's, I decided that I want to study plant-microbe interactions, right? And I did study that. So loss is not just in the fields when it comes to agriculture. You have diseases that are there on the fields, and that's just the surface. There are storage diseases where if things are not stored properly post-harvest, they lose value, and then they are eaten up by rodents and other animals. And if fungi and other things grow on them, you cannot eat it because it has mycotoxins. Because fungi, when they grow on something, the way fungi eat is that they secrete their digestive enzymes out and then take up smaller broke down molecules. And in that process, they also release toxins, which will help them outcompete other things. So if you don't want other microbes to eat the food that you have found as a fungus, what you want to do is throw out some toxins so other organisms, including mammals and rodents, cannot touch it. So we need to be careful about those losses as well, because if there's a particular amount of toxins in a shipment of grain that is not fit for consumption by any animal for that matter, and it needs to be dumped. So loss is not just in the fields. And then there's the issue of trademarks and patents. We all know about, I don't know if you know, but in school we learned about Texmati, which is Texas scientists taking basmati rice and patenting it as Texmati rice and selling it and making money out of the patent. Because when you get a patent, what it means is that when you sell it or when somebody else sells or uses it, the person who owns the patent gets a royalty or money for using it or distributing it. So basmati rice, which we have been using for thousands of years, was patented by somebody else and was sold and made money. And the same thing is true with the use of turmeric and the curcumin from it. And we're only just waking up to the fact that we have been doing some things which could be exploited and patented. So those are also agricultural laws to India, because if we had patented it, we would have made that money. So what do we do about all of these things? We need to get involved in order to bring about the change that we want to see. It's very easy to cry about what's wrong than to actually be involved and try to change, even if it is a minuscule. Because every single one of us is powerful, and only if we believe that we are powerful, we are powerful. If we believe that we are insignificant, our efforts and us as persons are insignificant. So we need to believe that we are powerful and we need to be involved. So what are the canonical careers that you might choose if you're in biology or biotechnology to be involved with? Doctors. Yes, you want to be a doctor. We have talked about this before. Nurses. That's another career. Teachers. And then scientists. These are some of the canonical careers, because when you take biology and then you want to end up as a doctor, and most often if you're female, you might end up being nurse. That's why I put up a male nurse picture. There's nothing wrong in being male and being a nurse if that is what you like to do. And then being a teacher or a scientist. Well, whatever canonical career you choose, if you chose it with love, that would be awesome, because if you're doing it passionately, you'll be the best in it, and automatically you'll be rewarded with money. So these are some of the canonical careers with which you could change the society, right? As a teacher, you would have a lot more influence, and as a scientist, you would be mentoring students as well, and that is a very noble thing to do as well. And these are canonical careers that we know about. What about expanding our horizons and branching out into other careers? Could we be economists? Yes. You could have a bachelor's of science in biology and biotechnology and go out to become economists, because we need economists who understand biology to make decisions in terms of biology. How do we store food? Why investment in storing food is as important as investment in growing food. So if you have both biology and economics as your arsenals, you could do definitely a lot. Then become agriculture engineers, people who design silos and smart systems to store and transport and manufacture or add value to ag and ag products. The most interesting thing and the most catchy thing, at least in the US these days, is to become a science communicator, where you take science and then break it down into very simple language and then tell people about the science, because not everybody has a science degree, but everybody is affected by the science that we practice and we discover. So if you have a science degree and the ability to connect with people naturally and a flair for journalism, and then you have the ability to simplify things, that's an awesome career to begin with, and that's something that we really need. Then of course you could be plant breeders, which is something that we need to think about. I mean, it's a kind of scientist thing, but then it's more of doing the same thing, is understanding genetics and trying to improve our crops every day. So that is something that biologists should think of as a career. And then entrepreneurship. That's something we never think about, because we want to go to college and get a job. We don't want to bring more jobs to the table. But it's actually very easy, if you think about it, to bring more jobs to the table, and it just needs a little bit of passion and to think that you are more powerful. For example, if you are in a city or a town where there are more than one university, then a simple service of growing a culture and then sequencing or even doing a PCR, just one thing as a service, is so important, because not all institutions and all labs would have access to something, but they could pay a small fee every time they wanted to do it. And you could also do diagnostic services And there are just a lot of options. If you understand the biology, you can make money out of. Of course, this is important. We talked about basmati rice and curcumin. So you can be a biology graduate and then go into law. You can study patent law and become a patent attorney or a patent lawyer, and then help people understand the effects of biology and patenting biologicals. Finally, scientists can become awesome politicians, because when you learn science, science is basically using logic. And politics needn't be somebody's profession. It could be something that we all do. And in a democracy, it is important to understand that politics is what we make of. And we are the kings and queens, and we employ politicians to do our job. So if you are a scientist and if you understand, say for example, you know what GMO is and you know how safe it is, which I think it is, which I know it is, because if it is not safe, the scientists won't put it out there. Because hundreds of thousands of tests and things are done before the GMO is let out. But we don't like GMO because somebody who does not have a science degree tell us that it's bad for us. Because it's always easy to believe what is bad than to believe what is good. But if we had science communicators, and if we had science degree holders making decisions for us, then those things might become easier to understand and make informed decisions of. So these are some of the non-canonical careers that I have come to know in the due course of time that we can do with a science degree and a BSc biotech or a biology degree. So that's all I have to talk to you about today. It was more of discussing with you what I have learned in the past. So at this time, I would entertain any questions or comments or feedback that you have, and I'm going to hold my mic. Thanks.
The interactive session is now open for the participants. So participants can please go ahead and post your comments or queries in the comment section.
I mean, please feel free to ask about anything. I know I was introduced, but there are other things that I did to get where I am. So you could ask me whatever about whatever I presented or whatever I did not. But that was something that you wanted to ask. So I have a question here on my postdoc experience. So here's the thing. When I was a PhD student in November 2019, I actually almost got offered an assistant professor position at a university here. And that is what typically you want to do, because a PhD is a training to do science individually. And anybody who has a PhD should be able to do research on their own. But then postdoc has become a canonical step or a necessary step in an academic's career to get to a professor position. And oftentimes it's regarded as a lieutenant or a place taker, where you don't get a professor position, but you want to be in academia, so what do you do? That's mostly why people stay as postdocs. As a postdoc, what you are an independent researcher. You are attached to a lab and you help run the lab, and you also do your own projects. And that's what postdoc experience means. And you could do a lot of things. For example, my PhD was studying nematodes and fungi and their interaction with soybeans. So that was just biology of nematodes and fungi. It was not very molecular. It was very applied research, meaning how do we use fungi to control nematodes. And then for my postdoc, I chose a lab which does the other side. This lab studies the genetic basis by which some soybeans naturally resist the soybean cyst nematode. So it's more of a genetics perspective and plant biology perspective now, which, to be honest, for 6 years, I hadn't done a Western blot. And then I come to my postdoc, and the first thing I did was a Western blot. And it's a different system. So I took up this postdoc so I could get a different experience while I'm waiting for a job. It depends, the role of fungi in bioremediation. I would say that fungi are more important in subtropical regions and temperate regions than in tropical regions where the temperatures are more conducive to bacteria. So everything is context dependent. So if you're looking at a paper that describes a fungus that treats a particular disease in plants in a particular place, it might not work in a different place. That's something that we need to think about and ponder about, because there's no one-on-one interaction in real life. If you're throwing a fungus out to do something in the open, it is also going to interact with other microbes that are all around us. What do you mean by VAM fungi? Could you please expand what VAM means?
It's vascular arbuscular mycorrhizae.
Okay, that's how it's said. Okay, fine. So arbuscular mycorrhizae, as I understand, they are naturally occurring fungi that have a relationship. Most of the things are, as I said, difficult to understand on its own, because in order for that mycorrhizae to make contact with a particular species of plant, we don't know if there are other organisms in the soil that are helping. And this is an open question, so I'm going to try to give a very vague answer. I don't know, the focus on VAM in bioremediation, it again is very, very context dependent. Will your fungi grow there? Is it the best thing to do? And again, it's a natural thing. There's some things like truffle, which is also a fungus, which cannot be farmed. A lot of fungi cannot be farmed. So those are some of the things that might hinder us from making them do what we want them to do. But if they're already doing something there, it might help us understand how they're doing it and prevent any damage to that ecosystem. That's pretty much what I can talk about arbuscular mycorrhizae system and things like that, because I am not confident that there are people who are creating a bunch of arbuscular mycorrhizae spores and then throwing it everywhere and that helping people. But I would say that those are things that will help. Those are partnership relationships, correct? So they are there because they form a beautiful partnership. And so it might work for a particular plant, it might not work for the same genus, but a different species of plant. So everything is context dependent. Thank you.
So there's another question.
Yes.
About
What is the question?
I guess they need to send that again.
Fungi used in treatment plants by bioprocess? I don't understand that. What do you mean by that?
Mr. Elamaran can again ask that question. We are unable to understand it. What exactly you're trying to...
Yeah, please try to be more specific, and I will answer the question if I know. And the thing about getting a PhD is that you are an expert in a very, very narrow field. So if I don't know, I would just say don't know. So, but then if the questions are more specific, I would be able to give a more specific answer.
Mr. Lamaran can please type in the question one more time for us to understand.
If you mean treatment plants, the sewage treatment and whatnot, I study fungi that interact with plants, and sewage treatment plants is not something that I know about, because bioprocess makes me think that you're talking about sewage treatment plants where it is a large amount of sewage is treated and fungi and other things are used to remediate the wastes. Is that what you're going for? Ilamaran, are you still there?
Sir, I think the question is maybe he's asking on like fungi we could able to use it in bioremediation purpose. You are saying about the symbiotic relationship, everything in agriculture term, really it is very useful. And what about what do you think? How can we use such symbiotic associations in for the bioremediation purposes? Because so far we are concerning only with the bacteria, and probably
Yes.
rather than bacteria, fungi predominantly can able to grow anywhere, and it is a eukaryotic organism. Moreover, can able to possess more type of proteins, things like that. So, what is your opinion on this, sir?
There's no opinion here. The fact is that if you're in the tropics, you're left to deal with a lot of bacteria than fungi, because fungi really like 25 degrees Celsius, 22 degrees Celsius to grow well and do what they do the best. If you're subjecting fungi to something like 37 degrees Celsius or more, sometimes in summer it's 45 degrees Celsius, I don't think they will be able to grow. So again, it's context dependent. A lot of fungi and use of fungi is good for temperate regions, but it is not so great for tropical regions. And that is why the mushroom diversity, because mushrooms are fungi that we can see, the mushroom diversity is actually more in the temperate coniferous region than in the tropical region. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so there's something else I would add to this until somebody types something out, is that there's a fungus called Motirella, and it does a lot of things by mobilizing phosphorus in the soil, and so having Motirella in the soil might help mobilize phosphorus and make it more available to the plants. But again, when you're throwing something out in the soil, we must all remember that the soil itself has other things in it. And there's a phenomenon called fungistasis, which is inhibition of a fungus by other organisms in the soil, and that is very real. So if you throw out some spores, the spores aren't going to germinate if there are other things that are preventing the spores from germinating. So it's really, when you're looking at using biologicals in the field or using biologicals in a natural environment, the first thing that one must do is look at the natural environment and understand what is going on there, and if whatever you're going to throw in is going to be compatible there. So if there is a beneficial organism in a soil that is doing, say, something like phosphorus mobilization, and that beneficial organism doesn't like the fungus that you're going to throw, and the fungus that you're going to throw in might help the plant control another disease, then you won't have that protection. You know what I'm saying? Because it is not just one-on-one interaction at all. It is about a multitude of interactions in soil, and so it is very tricky. So your neighbor might have a field and using a particular biological and able to control a particular disease in the field, and then you are 3 kilometers away in a different field and you're throwing the same thing, but it is not working, and that is perfectly all right, and it's perfectly natural because the two soils are different. The way the two soils are being treated are different. Little things like how much water that gets into the soil every day matters as to what kind of microbes grow in the soil. So everything is context dependent, and that is why we cannot have a blanket organism. That is one of the main bottlenecks of using microbes or single microbe to do anything. So we are slowly moving towards using a consortium or a mixture of microbes to do things. Actually, these days, biocontrol is being done with a mixture of microbes for several reasons. One, people have figured out that one microbe is not enough because it is a multitude of interactions. Second thing, you cannot patent a single microbe, but you can patent something like a mixture or how a mixture is applied and things like that. So that is also the reason why a lot of people are looking at using mixtures of microbes to do something, and that mixture could just all be fungi, and the mixture could be fungus and bacteria, the mixture could be bacteria and chemicals. So there are products available in the market that's a mixture too.
I hope all your queries are or we can still wait for your questions.
I can take another question before I leave. And you could always follow me on Twitter and ask me questions there.
Now it looks like we have covered all our queries.
Okay.
On behalf of Brian Publishers, I take this opportunity to thank our resource person for the time and effort taken to prepare the presentation and for conveying new and valuable insights into this topic that we had a discussion upon. And hope our participants found this session useful and interesting. I kindly request you all to subscribe our YouTube channel and to take part in our upcoming events as well. Your valuable feedback can help us improve and grow further. Thank you all for your participation. And the feedback link for today's session has been posted. Kindly refer to the comment section. Thank you once again, Dr. Deepak Haarith. And signing off for now, wishing you all a happy weekend. Goodbye.
Do I log off too?
Sure, sir, you can.